Next month, one of my most anticipated movies this year comes out in Batman v Superman, where for the first time we're going to see the two most iconic superheroes ever squaring off on the big screen. So, leading up to that, I'm going to reach back and I want to review all of the old Batman and Superman movies that we've gotten before. Let's begin. 1978, Alexander and Ilya Salkind decided that they were going to produce an epic movie of Superman, the first ever comic book superhero. Now, what separated the 1978 Superman movie from anything else before it was that superheroes, comic books, all of those adaptations as far as film and television goes, up until then, had never been taken seriously. There was that time in the 30s and 40s and 50s where the superheroes were just seen as the serials, the 10-minute shorts leading up to the movie that you had gone to see. Then in 1966, Adam West and Burt Ward played in a major motion picture based on their television show Batman. Now, this was iconic because, again, it was the first time a superhero was getting a full-length featured film. However, this was in the 60s. We all know that the POW, the WAP, the THWOP, all of that was really campy, and of course, they were not taking it very seriously. And that was the attitude of comic books. The Adam West Batman show really did set comic books back because everybody thought that they were campy and cheesy. And so after that, then the comic book characters took another turn into the made-for-TV movies. Both DC and Marvel did this, and it was a really dark time for superheroes as far as being on television and movie screens. I do believe that Stan Lee has said, don't quote me on this, that Marvel Comics would sell the rights to make a movie of the Marvel superheroes for anybody that had two nickels to rub together. So, you know, you can see what a dark time that was for the superhero genre. And then in 1978, Alexander and Ilya Salkind decided that they were going to produce a massively big, taking it very seriously approach to Superman. Now, the first thing that I can say that sets this movie apart is, of course, the cast. The casting of Marlon Brando as Jor-El, Superman's father, and Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor, the villain. Back when I was a kid, I didn't know who those guys were, and it didn't matter to me. All I knew was that their name came before the word Superman on this title, and then Christopher Reeve, who plays Superman, his name came third. And so even when I was a kid, I thought that was a little bit weird. Well, now that I'm an adult, I can look back and say, getting Marlon Brando and Gene Hackman to star in this movie were huge. Marlon Brando was one of the most honored actors in Hollywood history. The guy had been nominated for several Oscars, but he'd also received Best Actor for On the Waterfront and Best Actor for The Godfather, and so this was a huge get for these guys, was to have him in their movie. Gene Hackman was also fresh off of a Best Actor award for The French Connection, and then would also later go on to win Best Supporting Actor for Clint Eastwood's Unforgiven. So these were the caliber of actors that they had in a comic book movie, and again, comic books have not been taken very seriously up to this point. This would kind of be the equivalent of if they were making a movie based on a video game and they got Tom Hanks and Leonardo DiCaprio to star in it. You know, it's just something that would really get your attention. So this is the first time that we ever saw Christopher Reeve in a movie. And going back and watching this movie, I can just say Christopher Reeve was born to play Superman. His take on Superman, I think, is almost about as perfect as you can get. He takes the character very seriously. He plays him as, you know, he is kind of a Boy Scout, you know, he doesn't lie, he doesn't cheat, you know, he's not ruthless at all, he won't kill people. But at the same time, the thing that I love about him is that Christopher Reeve's persona of Superman is that he kind of knows that he's a bordering on godlike abilities with his superpowers, And so that kind of gives him a bit of a charm, almost like a touch of arrogance when he's dealing with criminals, because he has all these little one-liners that he'll give.
Hi there. Something wrong with the elevator? Going down. Nah. Bad vibrations?
Heroes are very cynical. I'm a huge fan of like The Punisher and of Batman, Daredevil, and Wolverine. All of these superheroes that just have this very, very kind of cynical look on fighting crime. Superman is way above all of that. Christopher Reeve's take on Clark Kent is also incredibly amazing as well, because it is so different from the way everybody else approached Clark Kent. You watch Superman Returns, you watch Smallville, you watch Lois and Clark, or you watch Man of Steel. The way that all of those actors really approach Clark Kent is just, I'm just going to put on the glasses. And where I work, if these guys worked in your office, every lady in the office would have big crushes on these guys, because they're very handsome, and again, they still kind of play still a smooth kind of a guy. You know, I think some of them try to be a little dorky, maybe a little nerdy, but they really don't pull it off. Versus when you watch Christopher Reeve perform as Superman, he definitely adds on this layer of clumsiness. He is kind of a dork. And I can actually see why, in his take of Superman, why Lois Lane does not put together that Clark and Superman are the same guy. I mean, don't get me wrong, you know, Christopher Reeve as Clark Kent, he is a handsome guy, but he definitely plays a guy who's a bumbler, who's a klutz.
Daily Planet has a petition. I'm sorry.
Who's, you know, somebody that Lois can easily dismiss as a romantic love interest, because it's like, yeah, you know, Clark, he tries, you know, he's got a good personality, and again, he's handsome, but yeah, I can see why she doesn't connect Superman, because the way he acts when he's Superman and the way that he acts when he's Clark is something that, you know, I can believe why they, you know, would not put the two together. I want to talk about Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor, the movie's villain. Gene Hackman in this movie is unbelievable. He's so good. He is able to hatch this plan, which honestly is really, really crazy and maniacal, but is also really smart.
Now, as you may or may not know, I am, as they say, very heavy into real estate. In order to make money in that game, you have to buy for a little and sell for a lot. So, problem. How to make the land more valuable between the time you buy it and the time you sell it. Now, this is California. The richest, most populous state in the Union.
I don't need a geography lesson from you, Luthor.
The San Andreas Fault, maybe you've heard of it.
Yes, it's the joining together of two land masses. The fault line is unstable and shifting, which is why you get earthquakes in California from time to time.
Wonderful. Couldn't have said it better myself. Everything west of this line is the richest, most expensive real estate in the world. San Diego, Los Angeles, San Francisco. Everything on this side of the line is just hundreds and hundreds of miles of worthless desert land, which just so happens to be owned by Lex Luthor Incorporated. It occurs to me that a 500 megaton bomb planted at just the proper point would
destroy most of California. Millions of innocent people would be killed. The West Coast, as we know it, would
fall into the sea. Bye-bye, California. Hello, new West Coast, my West Coast. Costa del Lex, Lutherville, Marina del Lex.
Your plan couldn't possibly work.
I'll admit there were a few problems. Adjusting the precise trajectory of the missile, finding the optimum stress point for the fault line itself. Which, by the way, is target 0, right here. Ooh.
Gene Hackman's performance in this movie is incredible. He's able to produce this guy who is sadistic and does not care the fact that he's going to kill 1 million people, but at the same time, he's really witty. He's kind of charming. He has so many lines in this movie that just made me laugh, made me like him.
Tell me something, like, why do so many people have to die for the crime of the century?
Why? You ask why? Why does the phone always ring when you're in the bathtub? You're followed again.
It's one of those cat-like reflexes.
Every scene he's in, he owns that scene. I also want to talk about the John Williams score for this movie. I mean, the John Williams Superman theme is iconic. The way that it builds up to, you know, any time that you know Clark is maybe going to turn into Superman, or the time that danger is looming, is amazing. The way that it starts slow, and then it builds up, and then it builds up, and then it builds up, and then boom, here's Superman. Unbelievable. Okay, it's also hard to believe this movie came out in 1978, because having watched it again, I realized those special effects still hold up 38 years later, and I still believe that Christopher Reeve is flying. You know, the tagline of the movie was, "You'll believe a man can fly." And again, 38 years later, I still believe that I was watching a man fly. It is unbelievable that they did not use CGI, that they used strings, you know, and they used that to help him fly. And it looks so seamless. There's so many scenes in here where they show him flying around, and I think it's just incredible. Now, the only thing that I had wrong with this movie, Lois Lane is killed, and in order to save her, Superman decides that he's going to fly around the world in a counterclockwise motion, making the world rotate the opposite way, thus turning back time. Now, in this scene, like, the acting is really good. Like, when Christopher Reeve shows that he's very broken up about Lois's death, watching Lois sink into the earth and get buried and, you know, probably asphyxiate, like, that really was heartbreaking. That was really good to watch. But just the idea that he's going to rotate the world around, turn back time, like, that was really cheesy. That was really corny. But other than that, this movie was perfect. You know, the pacing is perfect. Every single member of the cast, whether it's Christopher Reeve as Superman, Marlon Brando as Jor-El, Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor, Ned Beatty as Otis, whether it's Glenn Ford as Pa Kent, Jackie Cooper as Mr. White, and Margot Kidder as Lois Lane. Just every single person who they got in this was perfect for the role. They played it. Everybody took it seriously, but at the same time, they didn't take it in so seriously to where it was melodramatic. They also knew that they had to have a little bit of fun. You know, Christopher Reeve as Superman winks at the camera every once in a while, you know, with his charm. Gene Hackman is playing this, you know, amazing bad guy, but at the same time, he knows that he has to be a little witty. You know, you have Lois Lane, who is just this really tough lady, you know. Yes, you know, her role is to always get saved by Superman, but Margot Kidder played her in such a way that, like, I got the feeling that she was an independent woman. And I also love how they have this storyline that we all know is going to lead into the second one, where in the opening on Krypton, we meet General Zod, Ursa, and Non. And we know that, you know, they're, of course, going to show up in the second one, and I love how they set that up with Jor-El sentencing them to the Phantom Zone. That was great. I thought Krypton was awesome. I thought their take on Smallville was awesome. It was kind of like a Norman Rockwell kind of a vibe. And then they get into Metropolis, and it was like a comic book. That's where kind of lots of the fun happens. And so, in the end, other than, you know, that cheesy part of the ending, which ultimately I can still get by, I would say that Superman is almost a perfect movie. And in fact, I would say that Superman is
the stuff that dreams are made of.
Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. As I said, leading up to Batman v Superman, I'm going to be doing a lot more reviews. You're going to see me review Tim Burton's Batman. I'm going to be reviewing all the Batman movies and all the Superman movies. So, this has been The Fanboy, and I'll see you next time.